So Thai, as you know, is famous for ThaiCon. That's our flagship event. We do it every year religiously, a couple of years obviously in virtual world. And we didn't have anything dedicated for the internet. Every year a bit of ThaiCon became a little bit more tech, a little bit more internet, but there wasn't a dedicated conference and both of us thought we should. And so now we are 10 years from there, 11th edition. And why I say we are not only fathers, we are proud grandfathers, because as Alok told me, we have reproduced India Internet Day with the first time ever done it in 2 cities. Yesterday back to back with Bangalore, which was a sellout, which was really amazing. Big call out to the Thai team, both in Delhi and Bangalore, to do it, to go back and forth. A lot of people have done that. One of our main sponsors and the co-chair, Mayank, has actually done up-down. He was in Bangalore yesterday where he's based. Mayank from Elevation Capital, you'll hear from him as well. And that he's coming here, red-eye flight pretty much at midnight to be here in person today. So that's just huge, tremendous commitment. And I think it's fantastic that we can see this collaboration through. We've come a long way in 10 years, clearly, right? Some of you probably weren't in the internet world 10 years ago. Many of us were. And I can tell you that we have moved on every stat possible. But if we were to just pick up a few stats, internet users, okay, 120 million maybe then. Today we are touching on 700 million users. So that growth itself is whatever, 5x odd. If you look at internet buyers or e-commerce online, that number was stunningly just about 10 million. That's all it was, 10 million. Guess what that number is today, anyone? Anyone who buys anything online, anyone who uses a payment system online, any guess? No prizes. It's close, 350 million, and obviously that's Rajan. You're not getting a prize, Rajan. You're from Thai, effectively. But that's true. So we have actually grown 30x in that time frame when it comes to actual buyers. So the e-commerce market has totally boomed. Number of unicorns today, if that's a good metric, I guess it is. A lot of people use it. We are at 105 officially, I believe, or something like that, just behind the US, which is in 600s, and China, which is probably in about 300s odd. 105, big boy club, clearly, we've arrived. How many in 2012? Probably 1 or 2, depending on which day you looked at it in the stock market. 1 or 2, and no prizes for guessing who was 1 or 2 that time. Okay, we've come a really long way from them. And the internet, I mean, I think it's just amazing. In terms of funding, lots of VCs here, and they have come here despite knowing the fact that they will get swamped and mugged and everything else will happen. But thank you for being here. But funding way back then was probably about, the number I have is 1.4 billion. Sequoia table, correct me if I'm wrong. Today it's about 42 billion a year. And that's the kind of growth. So it's been stunning whichever way you look at it. Even if we look at the last couple of years, how much has changed? Who knew today, we can say, it took a pandemic for the Indian ecosystem to be catapulted, I think, into the stratosphere, into that big boy club. But that's what it took. There were so many people just sitting on the sidelines saying, yeah, the internet's fine to research, but I'm not putting my money there. Everything changed, right? We all remember the first lockdown, the second lockdown, and the only thing that worked was online. And trust was reposed in the system, and off we went. And we had a record number of IPOs during this period. Yes, we will talk a lot about what's happened to those IPOs. There's lots of discussion about that, which everyone wants to know. But the growth was just, you can't deny it. And you know the beauty about this medium? There's no going back. It's a one-way street. Once you've tasted blood, no one goes back. So whether it's your mother, your grandmother, for some of us, our kids, for some of us, our domestic servants, everyone who's buying something online today is not going back the other way. This is irreversible. India internet has indeed arrived, and arrived in this massive way, which I don't think anyone envisaged how quickly we'll get there in the last 2 to 3 years. Cut to the present, cut to 2022. Obviously, things have been tough. There's no question, right? Many questions are being raised. The first question is, hey, what just happened? Like, what is this winter of funding? What is this that everyone's talking about? What happened to the slowdown? Second one, especially people who invest in the stock market, in the internet, what happened to those stock values? How is it even possible to fall down so much? Why did this happen? Is it just India, or is it macro? Is there something happening worldwide which is impacting this? Most importantly, how long is this going to last? If you're a startup entrepreneur, and I see many of you out here, will this impact me as a startup? Or is this only going to impact the guys who are going for IPO? Guys who are going for IPO, how much more do I have to delay? Should I look at M&A? Do I do another bridge round? People in the middle, growth capital, is this going to impact me too? There are just so many questions which I promise you, we really, really aim to answer each one of them during the day today. The program has been curated with a lot of thought. Each one of these questions gets answered right here. And if they don't, you will be meeting with everyone over the networking breaks. Please ask the questions of whoever you want. They're very relevant questions. I can't say no one has the answers. I believe few people have few answers. And you're going to get a bunch of answers from different people. Starting with the first panel, we have a lovely keynote, which we'll hear from Kalyan from Flipkart very soon. He answers some of these. It's a very fascinating time. I believe it's a wave, like all waves. And I believe the most important thing and the most important question is, how do I ride this wave? How do I navigate this wave so that I come out on the other side stronger, fitter, better? How do I get that holy grail? The holy grail for all of us in any business is, how do I cut costs and yet not compromise with growth? Is that possible? Indeed it is, and we have many fine examples of that, and we'll talk about that too. So I'm excited about the program which is going to follow. I think we're going to have a great time. And before I end, I have to thank a few people. Very importantly, I thank the audience for showing up on time, packed house, which is phenomenal. I have to thank our sponsors, a long list, but I will call out our platinum sponsors. We have Elevation Capital, right? Partners. Elevation Capital. I still know them as safe partners. I have a very special bond with them. They were my first funders, and we're very, very close still. So I'm really excited that they are here. We have Sequoia, who's always here for us. So thank you very much, Sequoia. The whole team is here, I think. Thank you, Rajan. Thank you, Mohit, and everyone else who's here from Sequoia. We have our gold partners, Microsoft, who have always been supporting us too, and we have a whole host of others. I have to thank our chairs who've done an incredible job. Mayank and Ashwini, if you can stand up, please, so everyone can see you. Turn around, wave to them. They're our chairs, guys. I can tell you they have selflessly toiled through all of this, aided by this planning committee mafia, I call it, which, as they would feel, disappeared when they needed them the most, then suddenly appeared randomly, then did something. But a lot of us are here. If you're wearing a black t-shirt, we are connected with these t-shirts, then we are connected with India Internet Day in some way. And most of all, the guys who make this happen, it's the TIE team, it's the TIE secretariat, very ably led by two very, very phenomenal ladies, both Gitika and Upasna. If they're around, if you don't know them, then yeah, the most important people in the room. And the entire team. So I can't call out everyone, but I know that Meenal and Nitin did the back and forth yesterday, Bangalore, back here, Red Eye. I know there are many other people. They're going to come up later and take a bow. And without much ado, on to our next session. Thank you very much for being here.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Deep. My presentation today first talks about some global trends, and then we move on to the Indian ecosystem. 2021 last year was a record year for startups. IPOs increased 3 times versus the previous year and 12 times versus 2017. A record $680 billion raised through IPOs last year. Last year saw a massive amount of new venture funding as well, double of what we saw in 2020. In 2020, it was roughly $167 billion. In 2021, $330 billion raised in new venture funding. That said, in 2022, we are already seeing a very big reset. If you just look at revenue multiples on NASDAQ, 8 to 9x in 2018, all the way up to 2021, 15x multiples, and right now we are back to where we started in 2018, 8 to 9x multiples. The Great Reset is across all categories. No category has been spared. Anywhere between 40 to 70% corrections on forward revenue multiples. Of course, as you can see here, fintech is by far the worst hit category here. Tech stock prices have been hit globally across all categories. Hot IPOs 2021, anywhere between a 40 to 80% correction. E-commerce, excluding the big cap companies, corrections of anywhere between 50 to 80%. Work from home stocks, anywhere between 60 to 90% corrections. New IPOs have fallen to a 2-decade low. H1 of 2021, 100 new IPOs. If you just look at the previous 3 years, H1 average, 33 new IPOs. The first 6 months of this year, only 5 new IPOs. Why this reversal? First, end of cheap money with rise in inflation and interest rates. Number 2, the global economy is softening. Number 3, the war is worsening inflation with supply shocks in essential commodities. Finally, I think we all overestimated the digital shift coming from COVID. Number 1, end of cheap money. On the left side, you see highest inflation in the last 40 years, 7 to 8% in the US. And you can see interest rates on the right side beginning to go up quite dramatically. The global economy is softening by all measures. We also look at 22 here, calendar year 22, and we also look at calendar year 23 here. Everybody had originally shared some estimates in the beginning of the year, and everybody has actually downgraded their own previous forecasts and estimates. For example, World Bank estimates for 2022 growth rates 4.1% to start with, and right now in 2022 it's 2.9%. The Ukraine war is worsening inflation. Here we look at gas prices and power prices in Europe versus January, anywhere between 2.5 to 4x. Just in the last 8 months, prices have gone up. COVID overestimation, just some examples here. On the left side, you see how Zoom and Peloton, some of these stocks are actually already below pre-pandemic prices. On the right side, you look at Zoom's revenue growth, slowed down from 300-400% to right now tracking to single-digit growth rates. What is happening in India? For startups in India, last year has been a record year, just like the US. 44 new unicorns, 44 new companies that crossed the $1 billion valuation threshold. But India is facing similar macro challenges like the rest of the world. What you see here is consumer confidence indices. The red one is current situation index, which even today in 2022, although on a higher trend, is still below what we saw in 2018 and 2019. And the blue line is future expectations index, which is still slightly below what we saw in 2018 and 2019. Inflation continues to be high. As you can see here, wholesale inflation is much higher at about 13 to 14%, and CPI is anywhere between 6 to 7%. Most unicorns in India are still private, unlike the US, and we believe they're trading at a premium. Once we apply global benchmarks to these Indian startups, to all of our Indian startups, we believe there could be a correction over the next few quarters across all categories. Looking ahead, how is Flipkart thinking of navigating this environment? What are we doing at Flipkart? Number 1, do everything to preserve cash, cut down on discretionary capex and M&A spending, ramp down unsustainable experiments. At Flipkart, we sometimes call these science projects, and ruthlessly prioritize resources. Continue doubling down on key focus areas and invest for the long term. Few opportunistic areas that will open up for selective M&As to take advantage of the market. Find innovative ways to provide deep value to consumers in this inflationary environment. And finally, add value to the ecosystem. Sellers, kiranas, manufacturers, D2C brands, logistics service providers, all our partners who are smaller in size than Flipkart. Find ways to help them as much as possible. For startups with strong value propositions and sound business models, this environment could be a blessing in disguise. Long term, we continue to be very bullish on India. Big structural tailwinds have emerged. On the left side, some big initiatives which the government of India have undertaken over the last several years to make India into a world-class digital infrastructure, and all of us here are benefiting because of these demographic and technological tailwinds, including aspirational youth population, highly skilled labor force, and geopolitical tailwinds to benefit India. Thank you so much.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to India Internet Day. It's so good to see this packed house today morning after I saw the packed house in Bangalore last evening. It's just amazing to see all of you here. I am Mayank Khanduja, and at Elevation, I lead our investments in consumer tech, Web3, and healthcare.
I'm Ashwini, the CEO and founder of MakeMyTrip, an artificial intelligence company that's helping very large enterprises globally become AI native.
So let me just start off by saying that it's such a privilege to be a co-chair of this event, especially because this event is special in two ways. One, we're meeting in person after 2 years. I think all of us have missed this energy of an in-person event. Zoom just doesn't cut it. And secondly, this is the first time, like Deep said, we've done this event across two main centers of startup activity in India, Bangalore and Delhi. It's been a long haul for the organizing team, and I want to thank the TIE team, TIE Delhi-NCR and Bangalore, Deep, our mentor, and the whole steering committee for guiding us in putting this event together. And I think let me just talk a little bit about the theme that we've chosen for this event, Riding the Wave, Building Winning Businesses Today. As you all know, and I think Deep and Kalyan both spoke about it, 2021 was a banner year for Indian startups, 44 unicorns, $40 billion plus of capital flowing in, and very deep markets getting created across sectors. If you look at consumer tech and SaaS, they've always been there, but they've become much bigger. And new areas like Web3, D2C brands, and healthcare also have come up. But 2022 has started on a very sobering note. Tough capital markets have made everyone rethink their fundamental business models. I think people are thinking about what to do about their org structures, what operational efficiencies they need to drive, and the biggest thing, how much cash burn can they sustain? How much runway do they have? I think that clock on how many months of runway do I have has become like the most important question. So we thought this would be the best platform to bring the best of the minds together over here. Because in these tough times, the real founders shine. I think we all know the stories of Amazon, PayPal, even the MakeMyTrip, who've built great businesses through tough times. So I think this is the place where we thought we'll bring the best of the minds together to talk about, it's easy to ride the crest of a wave, right? But the tough part is in the troughs. So we hope that the builders today will be able to learn from the best in the business on how to ride this wave. So Ashwini will talk a little bit about the panels that we have in store for you.
So when Mayank, myself, Deep, Rajan, and a bunch of us got talking about these themes, I think broadly 3 things kind of emerged for us in terms of how we wanted to put together this event today. And you're going to hear these 3 themes kind of repeat across the different panels and the talks that are there today, right? The first one, Mayank mentioned it, 2021, 2022, it feels like a big truck has hit us all in some ways after living through 2021, which was distinctly a peak for the ecosystem. And Deep very, very kindly called me young multiple times today. I'm pushing deep into my 40s, and most other founders, and doing a lot to raise the average age of the founder ecosystem. But that said, most founders have not seen 2008. They've not seen 2000, right? So they've not seen these this repeat cycle of dips. And this one seems particularly hard because of what happened in 21, right? And you know what they say, the higher the highs, the steeper the lows, or the steeper the fall. And it definitely feels like a lot of pain. And I think that kind of takes us to the first theme you're going to hear, which is very much about resilience, right? And you could argue it's easy to ride the wave. It's harder to ride the storm. And, you know, the wave is all about the opportunities, it's about the hope, and there's a lot of money flowing, and everything seems fantastic, and riding the wave is definitely something we were coming out of in 2021. But going into 2022, it definitely feels like riding the storm. It doesn't feel like just riding the wave here, right? And going into the storm, there's a lot of fear. There's an incredible amount of fear, but there's also a lot of hope just because of the opportunities that lay ahead. And so as founders and through the panel and the talks you're going to hear today, you're going to definitely hear some themes about what is it that we're going to be doing, or all of us are doing as founders to basically ride this wave, right? So that's kind of the first theme. The second theme you're going to hear is, it's funny, we're all so caught up in 2021, 2022, we forgot another like tiny little, nuance is that we just got out of the pandemic. Right? Which leads us to the kind of the second theme, which is around leadership, organizational change, organizational design, rethinking talent, rethinking hiring. I don't know how many of you spend time on, Twitter, but everybody is always fighting about this topic of talent, and it's a raging debate, because what we're seeing right now is different shades of generations that are coming from completely different backgrounds, completely different set of contexts. And on one hand, you have families kind of grieving and coping from the trauma of have lived through, the pandemic. And on the other hand, you've got just talent that's coming and saying, well, I'm not going to come into my office. You can't make me come into office. And if you do, I'm going to leave and go find an opportunity somewhere else. And so you're going to hear a lot about themes around leadership, hiring, organization change, and behavior and through these panels. And the last theme, definitely finishing up on a high note here, is there's a lot of exciting things happening in terms of very specific categories, right? And a lot of positive momentum on 3 categories in specific. One is all things D2C. Whether it's Sugar or Boat or Bliss Club, which is like this fantastic new athleisure brand for women, is just a plethora of D2C brands that have come up in the market that are very value-driven, right? And seem to care about something, and their audience seem to care about the brand. And so a lot of excitement happening in that, and you're going to hear about the D2C story. Second is all things Web3. Despite all the skepticism on one hand and the issues happening on the investment side, I think on the other side, there's a lot of excitement around Web3 and the ability to actually define it tighter and figure out, what that story is going to look like. And the last category, something very close to home and to me, is all things SaaS and enterprise. Over the last few years, I think we've been talking about, from India for the world for at least, 8 years now. And it feels like we're at that point where you're actually seeing it happen in front of you, right? Early stage SaaS startups are absolutely exploding. And, the interesting pattern I would say in the last 2-3 years is you're not just seeing copies or cheaper versions of, SaaS products in the US. You're seeing entirely new categories that nobody's ever seen before. You're seeing investment in deep tech and infra in ways that we've never seen before. And so there's a lot of activity on the SaaS and enterprise side, which is, yes, we're finally on the map, and the whole India to the US or India to the world story is coming alive. And, that is the last theme, ending on a lot of positivity there.
So net, I think we're all very convinced that we are entering into this very long cycle of economic boom in India. And we believe that tech and tech startups will be at the core of it. So this whole platform is all about identifying those entrepreneurs, supporting them while asking the tough questions. Because there's never been a better time to build in India. So we'll not hold you from any of these conversations that are coming up. So for the first keynote panel, I'd like to invite on stage Shireen Bhan. Shireen Bhan, as the managing editor of CNBC TV 18, has been the voice of startups in India. I think only if you've been living under a rock would you not know about Shireen and her show Young Turks. Shireen, please.